Alright, hopefully we have finished our reflected ceiling plan, and now we need to lay out the steel for this building. And if we're looking at our roof framing plan on the steel drawings, we know that we have K24s. K means it is an open web bar joist, and there are 20 even spaces. This can get confusing. For what we have laid out right here, the important thing to take away is we have 20 even spaces, which means we actually have 21 bar joists. I could have written that differently. I didn't, but that's what we're dealing with. 20 spaces, which means we have 21 pieces of steel. K means bar joist. If that said W, it would mean I-beam. So let's take a look so we all know that we all know. This is an I-beam, solid structural member. Depending on the type of building, that could be an obstruction that we have to take into consideration when we're spacing our heads. The I-beam oftentimes means that we can't run a pipe as high as we wanted to, because we can very easily run through those open web bar joists and miss the fact there's an I-beam somewhere in the middle, and we ruin our whole plan. So this is an I-beam. Another example of open web bar joist. In this case, you have a large girder that is the column lines for this project. Instead of I-beams, you just have an oversized girder. And when I say oversized, looking at this photo, this might be a 5-foot deep girder. It's a big piece of steel. These guys right here are probably 24 inches deep. That's just me looking at this photo and knowing what I know from so many surveys. That's a big structural member. The thing to keep in mind with open web joist is we have what we call A's and V's. And in new buildings, your V's will pretty much always have a vertical piece of steel that blocks our access to run dead center. And ideally, when we're laying out lines that have to run through a bar joist, we want to hit the very center of the A and the V so that we know we're good and clear of the actual framing for this thing. So this is a K on a drawing, your I-beams are a W, and really the last thing you run into every now and then, this would be like a pole barn kind of structure, just warehouse spaces. This is called a Z Purlin, and it is because it is shaped like the letter Z. Very thin gauge steel, supported by heavier steel. This is really little more than strong enough to hold your roof up. You've got to be very careful about how much weight you put on a hanger on the edge of one of these thin gauge Z Purlins. Okay, off that lesson. 98 feet, 11 inches, and we need 20 even spaces. So we should know right away what we have to do is take 98 foot 11 and divide it by 20. So calculator, 98.92. That is the decimal for 11 inches. That will get a lot easier as you go on. I've got a cheat sheet on my computer in case I get flubbed. But 98.92 is 98 foot 11 divided by 20, and 4.94, which means we are just a little over 4 foot 11 inches. Right now we're not going to get stuck on that, and we're just going to call it 4 foot 11 because that little fraction, I don't care. It won't matter in the end. Let's watch this. 4 foot 11 inches. We need to draw our first piece of steel and then space them out. And what we're going to do is make sure that here we pull down to the steel 2 layer. This will be our bar joist. If we had column lines to insert, that would be on steel layer here. Steel 2, you can see it's the cyan color. Your line type actually has a dash and a dot. We want that. And now we're simply going to draw a line from top to bottom. So we can click on the line tool here or type in the word, but let's left click. Let's come over here and don't worry about where you're starting it. Just go top to bottom, left click, and then hit enter. Command's over. Next thing we want to do is hit the scissors, and we want to trim out from the inside wall. Left click, enter, left click. We're still in the trim command, but there's nothing to trim, so enter to exit that, and now let's hit enter again to go back into trim. Left click on the wall, hit enter, left click on the steel, and now we're trimmed all the way back to the proper location. Your bar joist will not go outside of the building. That's the thing we're doing here. Okay, 4'11" is our span, and most bar joist, a normal size, will have a 2-inch bottom flange, maybe a little bit bigger, but if we can zoom in, it's not going to be real easy to see. But you have what's called the top flange and bottom flange. We're drawing the very center of the bar joist, but we have to remember there is some substance to this thing. And too many drawings. This cannot go flat against the wall. That will not work. The wall will be built up and the bar joist will be next to it, at least far enough to miss the flange. So right now I'm going to show you an extremely useful command, and we're going to say that this bar joist is 3 inches off this wall. Center line 3 inches. Type in MIB and hit enter, and it's going to ask you down here at the bottom, always look, pick the reference point. What it wants is for us to pick this wall right here. Don't worry about where it snaps. We just want this whole line. Left click on the line. You'll notice your cursor crosshair changes, and it says now select the object to move. I want to move this object. Left click, and it wants you to enter the desired distance. I'm going to type the number 3, hit enter, and it moves it 3 inches off that wall. Now we're good to start copying 4'11". We can do this by actually using the copy command. Left click, enter, left click, and type 4'11 inches, enter. And then you can try to get smart with it and go 9'9", but we're not doing that. Adding feet and inches when you're used to doing tens for whole numbers. Practice it, you'll get better at it, but there's always a risk of screwing that up. So rather than copying over and over again, which does get the job done, but it will take longer, we have a tool called offset, which we have used already, I believe. Click on offset, and it wants you to specify the distance, so let's type in 4'11", enter, and now we can continue to pick the new line and just keep hitting left click until we're all the way across the building. Now that also takes a minute to do, so if you have a very large space, it might be more beneficial to come through here, click a couple of these lines, left click, enter your copy command, click on endpoint in this case, and we want to pick the bar joist that we did not pick, but it's closest to the one that we did. If you can tell that these are highlighted, this one is not. Click here, and now I can drag a group of these all at once, and as long as I snap to the endpoint of this one, I can just keep dropping these until the building is finished. And that worked out almost perfect. Just delete that extra one. And we went 3 inches off the front wall. We are 4 inches off the back. That's not something we're going to get too stuck on when we have to insert the steel ourselves. But there's nothing wrong with fine-tuning this in the future. All right, your structure is in here. We're going to end this video, give you some time to work through that if you didn't follow me that quickly. And our next step will be head layout. And then because we have our structure in place, we can work on pipe routing.